So, for today's video I was actually going to do something a little bit different, and I was going to show a little bit of arcade gameplay in the new Spitfires, just because I haven't put arcade up on the channel for a while. But apparently Gaijin didn't want me to do that. Damn. G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and thankfully, even though I've had fairly limited playtime on War Thunder over the last couple of days, I had a couple of battles saved up. It does of course figure the one time I was going to sit down and record, and over the last couple of days, Gaijin would have a few issues with their authentication server, but that's alright. So, this is the B-57B. It was first added in patch 1.47, and it's the first time I've ever put it on channel. I generally don't fly jet bombers very often, as they're a bit difficult to make interesting videos in. And this first battle, well, there's a couple of reasons I want to show it. It's very short. This is a mixed battle, and this map is Road to Grozny. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this map, this is a Germany versus Russia realistic battle map that is usually played out in Era 3 battles. So, mid-tier fighters, stuff that isn't too fast, and it is very, very, very small. I have to ask why the hell this map is in jet rotation. Especially in top tier jet rotation, where some of the fastest fighters in War Thunder live. Now I'm just coming up on bombing targets now. I've had to put the plane straight into a dive out of the spawn point because we are 60 seconds into the battle and I'm already in bombing position. First bombs are released, and as you can see, the enemy aircraft that have had to take off from the runway are already on me. They can take off and cross half this map in 60 seconds. I'm about to run into a flight of F2 Sabres. Now this isn't a problem of balance here, this is a problem of, well, the map. This map should not be in jet rotation at all, especially not top level jet rotation. We have maps like Spain that are some of the biggest maps in the game that are only ever seen by biplanes, and we get a mixed battle where you can have any map and any combination of aircraft, and we get a map that is about the size of an arcade battle map. Now a lot of people don't like mixed battles to begin with, but if you're going to put them in, Gaijin, for Christ's sakes, give us a map that's actually worth flying on. This battle was a loss for our team, but the whole battle only lasted 3.5 minutes. So, into our next battle, and we're on Korea, and this time we're not on a mixed battle. Now I've spawned in at standard altitude. I've chose to climb a little bit before leveling out and heading towards the bomb targets, and this is because, as you can see, we've got some fairly thick cloud cover here, and I'm sort of counting on the MiG-15s doing their normal thing of approaching rapidly from the runway, sub-cloud cover at sub-10,000 feet altitude, and in trying to intercept the Sabres as they're clearing the runway. If I'm up above, they won't see me, so I've got a free ride all the way to the bombing targets. I'm about halfway across the map now, so I'm beginning the dive through. I want to keep speed up. Now the first MiG-15 has been spotted to the lower right of the screen, however he is below the cloud cover. He can't actually see me. I'm getting a proxy spot because he's moving to engage F-86 Sabres beneath me. And first bombs have been released on the bombing target. Now you would have noticed I was putting the reticle slightly ahead of where the actual ground target was. This is because of the B-57B's unique bomb bay design. Now we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now I didn't actually release enough bombs to outrightly destroy that base on that pass, but it was actually quite deliberate. There's a second B-57 that's just behind me. It's an A model. Now he doesn't have the 50 caliber machine guns the B-57B is armed with. I can hit soft targets if necessary afterwards. He can't. So I'm letting him finish off the bases. This allows me to take the majority of the health out of 2, he can easily finish off the next 2, and I'm hoping he has a big enough bomb load on board that after I've crippled these first 2 bases, he'll be able to take the third one, and the 2 of us will take out all 3 bases in one pass. Now the speed warning on the B-57B can be a little bit interesting. As you just saw, I got my first speed warning at just sub 900 kilometers an hour, quick tap of the air brakes, drop the speed back, and now I'm accelerated out past 930 and I'm not getting any warnings at all. But overspeed kicks in at about 947 kilometers an hour, so I've got to watch my speed at this point. Second of my bomb load is away, again, base is crippled. Enough that 1 bomb should finish it off, he'll take the lion's share for the kill. I've got nothing left for the third target, so begin exiting. Now I'm not going to exit back through the center of the map. I'm going to go wide and around the back of the map and bring myself into line for the runway for a landing and a rearm. I should point out that me and the B-57 behind me are not in a squad and we're not on comms. He's simply following me around, I'm watching what he's doing, and we sort of worked out what we were going to do without any communication whatsoever. Unfortunately, as it turned out, he didn't have either the bomb load he needed to be able to take out the third base, or he over-released on the 2 bases that I damaged, and he didn't have the ordnance to take out the third base either, so we're both RTB. Now, the B-57's bomb bay design, it features a rotating bomb bay, which is unique to the B-57B. No other bomber in War Thunder currently has this feature. What it is, instead of having simple bomb bay doors that drop open to release the bombs, the internals of the aircraft actually contain a giant cylinder with the bombs inside of it. When the pilot triggers a bomb release, this cylinder rotates 180 degrees where there is an open slot, and then the bombs fall out. The cylinder continues rotation through and reseals itself. The idea is when you're releasing bombs, when you open a traditional bomb bay, the air rushes in, it slams against the solid back wall of the bomb bay, it creates a huge amount of drag, it slows the aircraft down. When you're building a jet bomber design, speed is life, anything that slows you down is a bad thing, so the cylinder prevents that from happening. The actual time that the bay is exposed to air is very limited. It's also much easier and faster to seal up the bomb bay when it's a rotating cylinder rather than a series of doors that have to close. So what does this mean for War Thunder gameplay? Well, the rotation time of the cylinder is actually modelled in-game, and it takes about a second to a second and a half to complete rotation. So you hit the spacebar to drop your bombs, it's actually a second to a second and a half before that bomb is in the air. Any movements you make after hitting the spacebar in that period while the cylinder is rotating into position will actually cause the bomb to go off target. Now, the aiming reticle for the bombs the B-57 has does not take into account the time it takes to actually rotate the cylinder, so you have to anticipate this cylinder rotation on any bombing you do. Now, a second to a second and a half doesn't sound like a huge difference, but when you're dropping bombs at between 800 and 900 kilometers an hour, that difference is anywhere between 100 meters to half a kilometer. So when flying the B-57B, you need to learn to anticipate that drop and drop the bombs aiming at a point before the target, so by the time the cylinder has completed its rotation and the bomb is released, it is flying in onto target. You've basically got to learn to lead ground targets. And this can require a little bit of relearning. I myself have pretty much learnt, even on my level bombers, to release bombs at low altitude and then to immediately lift the aircraft to make sure I'm clear of the blast radius of the bomb so I don't blow up my own plane when low altitude level bombing. Doing that in the B-57 will actually cause you to lob the bomb over the target by quite a significant distance, and you'll see an example of this in just a few moments. All of this comes down to is, at least in the B-57B, there is actually quite a lot of skill involved to actually be able to accurately hit targets on the ground with 100% reliability, and even I miss regularly in this aircraft. I fail to anticipate the rotation of the cylinder a little bit too much sometimes. There is a skill set involved in this plane to be able to bomb well, on top of the skill set required to actually keep a bomber alive in an environment where you're being hunted by the MiG-15Bs. So coming in on final approach, use air brakes to slow yourself down. Obviously, you don't want to drop your landing gear or your landing flaps before around 350 kilometers an hour, otherwise they will rip off. Ideal touchdown speed for the B-57B is between around 250 to 300 kilometers an hour. You can land faster than that, although on the shorter runways in War Thunder the plane will have trouble pulling up. Its brakes are not that powerful. Any slower than that, it will still glide, but it will start to wallow around a little bit, and it can just tip over, so try and keep it in that zone for safe landing. Now, there is a MiG-15B flying around the runway at the moment. Traditionally, I wouldn't put the plane down in this situation, but by the time I had spotted it, I was already heading down below 400 kilometers an hour and on final approach, so if I throttled up, I wouldn't have got energy and speed back fast enough to keep myself alive. It's better to put myself on the ground and just trust that my team and the base's AAA guns will keep me alive. And on a side note, I'm really not entirely sure that F-86 Sabre had quite enough freedom on it. So, while I'm sitting on the runway waiting for my reload, yes, the B-57 has an opening cockpit, and I'm mortally disappointed that Gaijin didn't model the internals of the cockpit in this aircraft. I would have loved to have flown this thing in sim with a fully modelled cockpit. It is quite possibly one of the most beautiful aircraft in War Thunder. I really love this thing. And there goes the MiG-15 on its strafing runs on the runway, out the other side. RK Kahakta. That name sounds really familiar for some reason. Well, he's in a MiG-15 in the air, and apparently he's got a ship pilot on the ground on the runway. Surely this will be where the match ends. He's making his turn. Throttle up, I can't sit stationary on the ground, start getting my run up. Here he comes, closing in, 1.8 kilometers out. Closing fast. There's the shots. And that was the sound of a plane exploding, but it wasn't mine. Just a little note to all the pilots out there. If you're going to run your mouth in chat and call a pilot shit, do yourself a favour. Try not to pancake your MiG-15 at 900 kilometers an hour into the enemy's runway while trying to strafe the shit pilot out while he's on the ground in the very next match. I do want to say thank you, Hector, and no hard feelings. When I was going back through the videos and realised exactly what had just happened, I hadn't laughed so hard in a long time, so thank you very much for that. Anyways, B-57B back in the air. I lift off the runway at about 300 kilometers an hour, and on Korea I like to use all of the runway to make sure I've got maximum airspeed, just in case there is another aircraft coming in to try and attack me. Get as much as you can before you get up, because you will lose a bit of speed during the lift, due to the mass of the aircraft. And at this point, the US team has pretty much dominated this match. There are 2 enemy aircraft remaining. They're both playing hide and seek in the clouds. At least one of them is a MiG-15B, but he's staying as far clear as he possibly can, which works out perfectly fine for me because that gives me more time to blow up ground targets. Now, as you can see in chat, my next target is going to be the bridge, and we really need to take that out now. In the long run, Korea does have an auto-win condition for Russian forces. However, it's one that takes a little bit of time to kick in and one you can delay. Russian forces move from 2 points on the map towards point A in order to capture it. One of those points is direct overland, and it takes about, well, give or take about 35 minutes to get to. The second force comes in from the west side of the map, or the left-hand side of the map. Now, that force has to cross a bridge in order to get to point A to cap it, and it can get to the cap point in around about 20 minutes. However, if you blow up that bridge, there is no way for those ground forces to actually be able to cross into point A, so you can force a delay in the auto-win condition simply by taking out the bridge. Now, at this point, we've been in the battle for about 10 or 15 minutes, so those ground forces should be just about on the bridge. If I blow it up now, they will just bunch up on the other side and sit there, and we buy ourselves 10 minutes before anything can make cap circles. With 2 B-57s, 10 minutes is more than long enough to take out the last base target, and to go and bomb out the enemy base, if necessary, if the enemy fighters aren't destroyed and continue the run. So, another feature of the B-57B is its machine guns, and I haven't really spoken about those so far, and that's because there's not really much to tell. It's armed with multiple 50 caliber machine guns with 2,400 rounds of ammunition between them. They're mounted in the wings, so convergence does matter. However, they're not mounted far enough off the fuselage for it to be too big an issue, and yeah, they're 50 caliber machine guns. They're exactly what you've been using all this time when flying your American line. Now, the reason why I haven't brought them up too much is why they are ideal for popping soft targets. They're not actually all that good for taking out armoured targets. You can kill medium heavy tanks with 50 caliber machine guns with ground target rounds. You can actually do it. The problem with the B-57 is your approach speed is again around 800 kilometers an hour, and trying to get that level of accuracy to be able to hit weak points on tanks with 50 caliber machine guns in order to be able to kill them while moving at that speed is you don't have a lot of time on target. This makes precise shooting very difficult, which results in you needing to slow down to give yourself more time on target, but that slowing down makes your MiG-15 food, so on maps like Korea at jet tiers, which have very few soft targets, you tend not to use them. So on final approach to bombing the bridge, and this is what I was talking about when I was saying anticipating the cylinder. I've released the bombs, and to make sure I'm clear, I immediately lift the plane, but you can see the bomb lobbed and went straight over the top, landing about 100 meters on the other side of the bridge. This is because I didn't give the cylinder enough time to complete rotation before bombing. You need to maintain level flight, make sure the bomb is clear, and then pull out of the way. Now, while the B-57B does have bombs on this bomb load mounted underneath the wings, it is worth noting that their release time on the wing bombs are exactly the same as the release time on the cylinder bombs. They both work on the same timer, so even though they should straight drop off, they actually don't. So this time hold level even though I'm in a dive, release a couple of extra bombs, bombs are released, and bridge is destroyed. Dropping 3 was a little overkill, but I just wanted to make sure that bridge was down. Now I'm going to bring it back around and head for that last base target. Now normally when flying a jet bomber like the B-57B, I wouldn't turn back quite as short as I did. The only reason I did it this time is because, well, basically we have the airspace secured, so we don't need to worry too much about fighters coming in. I blew a lot of speed making that turn. Generally I'd go much wider, turn right on the outside of the map, and then come back in for a second pass. And that's the last of the enemy aircraft destroyed, so dump everything I have to make sure this base goes down, and that is the end of the match. So let's go through the results. So, results for the match. First place for the team with 2 ground kills. I got the Brazilian Air Force Randell and anti-mech, 31,750 silver lions, and I actually was awarded points for all 3 base kills. 4,460 modification research points, with 8,028 research points going through the AD2 Skyraider. As you can see, I'm re-researching the fuselage repair, or going back to it. I've already unlocked the first bomb load and the first ammunition belts. I'm now completing the rest of the Tier 1 upgrades before I progress too far into Tier 2. And overall, not a bad match. Now, back to those 50 caliber machine guns. Why the aircraft is equipped with them, and it most certainly can use those 50 calibers to try and shoot down enemy fighters. I mean, after all, it does have 8 of them. It's one of those things I try and avoid doing if at all possible. The B-57B is quite manoeuvrable for a jet bomber, and it is quite fast for a jet bomber, but it's not an air superiority fighter, and if you're taking the B-57 into a realistic battle and engaging things like the MiG-15Bs in combat, then something has gone severely wrong in that match before that point. The 50 caliber machine guns should be considered as absolute last resort in air combat. If there is absolutely nothing else you can do to get away and your team is too far away to give you support, then engage and cross your fingers that you're facing a bad pilot, because any good MiG pilot will destroy you. After all, intercepting and destroying high-speed, high-altitude bombers was exactly what the MiG-15 was built for in the first place. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed these first impressions of the B-57B. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.